Alright, so as I figure out more stuff about the A7 IV, I'm making more videos about it, and this camera I absolutely love, so I hate the fact that I'm making, negative videos about it, but, I just want to put it out there, because if you're deciding to buy this camera, or if you're, have this camera, it's good to know what its limitations are, so that if you're doing something, you don't get blindsided by it. Like, for example, yesterday I figured out that with the A7 IV, you cannot use pocket wizards with it from the hot shoe. You can with the other Sony cameras or pretty much any other camera, but with the A7 IV, they adjusted the hot shoe of the camera so that pocket wizards don't really work with it. So, just want to put that out there for you guys so that you guys know what you're getting into. And as you can see, I have a bunch of lenses here, and the reason for that is that one thing that I did also figure out about this camera just today is that the focusing map on this camera works with only certain lenses. So in this video, I'm going to be going over with you guys what kind of lenses work with the camera. Because, for example, when it comes to the focus breeding compensation mode on the camera, only a certain Sony lenses work with it. But when it comes to the focus mapping, it's a little bit more complicated. So in this video, we're just going to be going over those stuff. So yes guys, make sure to subscribe to this channel if you're interested in the Sony A7 IV, because every day as I find out more stuff about this camera, I'm putting it out there for you guys so you guys know everything you need to know about this camera. For example, pocket wizards don't work, and also some of Sony's older hot shoe microphones like this one right here, they don't work with the A7 IV. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So let's get into this camera's focus mapping mode. So with this camera, if you have a native Sony lens, like for example, I have this Tamron 28-75mm, which is obviously for the Sony, the focus mapping works as you can see. The camera works really well with it, and the focus mapping mode is like, I haven't dove that much into it to see like how useful it is, but like, yeah, as you can see, it works fine with this lens right here. And I thought to myself, this is a great feature, especially if you're, manual focusing. For example, if you're using vintage lenses or if you're using some cinema lenses with the A7 IV, it would be great for that. But here's the problem. So let's try to add a vintage lens to this camera. So let's take off the Tamron lens right here, and let's add the Helios 44 to I think this 50mm f2 vintage lens from USSR. This is a pretty, is it gonna focus? We're shooting with the FS5 right now, so the focus is gonna be not perfect, so you guys are gonna have to put up with that. But this is an old Russian lens right here that a lot of people love because of its swervy bokeh, and I love this lens too. And I have it just adapted with just a simple photo deox and 42 to next adapter. Anyways, that's what it uses. So if we adapt this to the camera, we put it on there, guess what happens? We go to the focus mapping mode and it is off. And then if we try to turn it on, it gives us an error saying, what does it say? This lens attached correctly, is not attached correctly, or is not sported. So the lens itself has to be sported in order to use focus mapping mode, which is, it kind of kills the point of it, because it's like I don't care about using focus mapping mode on like, I don't know, like a lens like this, like any of these like Sony autofocusing lenses, because like they already have amazing autofocus. Like I can just use the autofocus on these cameras and be fine with it. Like I don't need to use manual focus and like focus pull with that stuff. Like that stuff is mainly going to be used for, if I'm using a cinema lens, and again, if I'm using like a vintage lens, it would be great for that. So you can always just use the regular peaking mode, but you can only use certain lenses. So now let's try to figure out which lenses work with it. So as we can see, pretty much any vintage lens that you adapt that doesn't have any electronical connections to the camera, they don't seem to work. So what happens if we adapt something like Canon lenses using something like the MC11 adapter? So let's now add the Sigma MC11 adapter, which there's a bunch of different types of EF to Sony E mount adapters out there, but this is the one I own. So I guess if you have different types of adapters, they might work better, but I'm not 100% sure since I haven't tested all of them. But if I add this Canon adapter, as you can see, if I go to photo mode, I can actually autofocus with this lens. It works kind of shitty, but you can focus with this lens. So there's electronic connections to it, and if I were to take a picture, for example, you know, it'll show me the f-stop, and I can change the f-stop of the camera to whatever I want. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it or not, but you can change the f-stop. So there's electronic connections going to it, and I'm pretty sure if I bring it to the computer, I can also see that it'll like correctly identify that this is a Canon 100mm f2.8 macro lens. But if we go to the focusing mapping on the camera, unfortunately it says invalid with this lens. So, and I also tried this with my other Canon lens, so like the Canon A7IV to 300mm, it gives me the same exact error. So if you were to adapt any, you know, Canon EF cinema lenses, you're not going to be able to use the focus mapping mode on it. But what happens if we use the Sigma Canon lenses on this camera with the MC11 adapter? Then that's a different story. So if we add it, just take the cap off. So right now we have the Sigma 150-600mm lens, and voila, the focus mapping actually works on it, and autofocus works like almost like a native lens on this camera. Like, I'm gonna make a separate video talking about adapting lenses to the A7IV with the MC11 adapter, but spoiler alert, it seems to work pretty great, especially with Sigma lenses. But yeah, so if you have Sigma EF lenses, you can adapt those to the A7IV and be able to use focus mapping. So those are the types of, so you can use those ones, which is great. And you might be like, oh, is that it? No, it's not over yet. Now we're gonna try another Sony native lens, okay? We're gonna use another Sony native lens. Let me just close the cap on this. There's like 20 caps right here on my table, so it's a little confusing. We're gonna use another Sony native lens, which right here is the Samyang 14mm f2.8. This is the worst lens ever made in existence. And this lens, a little bit of a spoiler alert, doesn't have any electronic connections. So if you look at the back of this lens, if the FS5 ever wants to autofocus, but this camera does not, this lens does not have any electronic connections. And this is manual focus only, obviously. And with this lens, you cannot use focus mapping either. It just says, you know, focus mapping, it just says lens not connected or sported. So depending on what kind of Sony lens it is, it might also not work with this camera also. So in conclusion, guys, so the focus mapping seems kind of similar to the focus breeding compensation, where only certain lenses work, but it's a little bit more lenient. I guess you either has to be a Sony native lens that has electronic connections to it, so pretty much any autofocusing Sony lens should work on it. Or if you're using the Sigma MC11 adapter, then pretty much any Sigma EF lens should technically work on it. I only have one, unfortunately, so I can't, you know, say that all of them work, but from what I can assume, pretty much any Sigma EF lens should also work that also has electronic connections. So any autofocusing Sigma Canon lens adapted through the MC11 adapter should work on the Sony camera also. But if you try to adapt a Canon branded or pretty much any other non-Sigma Canon lens to the MC11 adapter, those you cannot use focus mapping on. But the thing is that there's other adapters you can get, like for example Metabones has a Canon EF to Sony E-mount adapter, so maybe that will work. I'm not 100% sure because I don't own one, so I can't really test it out. And if you own one, and if you own a Sony A7IV, make sure to let us know in the comment section if that works or not. And if you do, I'll pin you in the comment section or whatever. So Hopefully, if anyone does own it, they can let us know. But from what I can tell, it only really works with native Sony lenses. And the biggest bummer for me is that you cannot use vintage lenses with the focus mapping feature, because I felt like that would be like the perfect, combination. Using the focus mapping, which gives you, arguably a superior way of focusing than just using focus peaking, but also being able to use these old lenses, or even using like cinema lenses, like the Canon EF cinema lenses, or if you get some Alexa lenses or whatever, whatever you get your hands on. Being able to use focus mapping with this camera would have been really nice, but unfortunately but for some reason Sony doesn't allow it. Maybe to do the focus mapping, it needs some information from the lens in order to be able to map properly. It would have been nice if they just let us put in the information into the camera manually. Then maybe it would have worked, but I don't know. The camera doesn't really seem to. The camera seems pretty strict on what lenses it allows it to work with the focus mapping feature. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully it was useful to you if you were planning on getting this camera to use the focus mapping feature, because I mean, it's an okay feature. It's not like the craziest feature, but it would have been nice to be able to use it with vintage lenses. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. If you have any questions about this camera, make sure to let me know in the comment section below. As I do more research into this camera, I will let you guys know if I run into any problems with this camera, so you guys know what to expect with this camera once you get your hands on it. I don't believe in these first day reviews that come out before the camera even comes out, where they just scratch the surface. So as I learn more about this camera, I want to keep making more videos talking about what the problems and the cool things about this camera are. I will be making a full review of this camera eventually when I feel like I know everything I need to know about this camera, but right now I'm still learning more about this camera. Like this week, I'm trying to figure out how to get pocket wizards to work with this camera, because there's 3 studios that I do contract work with that use only pocket wizards, so I need to figure out how to use this camera in those studios. I mean, I don't have to use this camera. I can use my Sony A7R3 or my A7 camera with those studios, but things that I want to just try out this camera more and use it more, so that's why I've been trying to get this camera to work with the pocket wizard. So make sure to subscribe to this channel, because later this week I should have a video on that also. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.